Hey everyone, welcome to What's New Andrew. Today we're going to take a look at how to do PCI Passthrough for an NVIDIA GPU on Proxmox into a virtual machine running Plex. This is great because it'll offload all of the workload that's done with transcoding off of your CPU and put it onto a GPU, which is much better suited for the work. So in order to do this, we're going to have a virtual machine running Ubuntu 24.04, which is the latest long-term support version of Ubuntu as of this video. It's also going to be running Proxmox 8.2.2, which is also the latest version of Proxmox as of this video. The only requirement that we have is that Plex requires you to have one of their Plex passes, either the monthly, I think there's an annual one, or the lifetime one in order to do hardware transcoding. So take a look at their website and then you can go ahead and follow along with this video to see how to do the hardware transcoding and go from fully saturating your CPU and having it do all the work to having the CPU sit by and not have to sweat so much while the GPU does all the transcoding work for you. So if this sounds something useful for you, let's go ahead and jump in and get started right now. Okay, in order to enable PCI Passthrough within Proxmox, we have to enable a few things. The first thing is going to be enable IOMMU. That's done within the Universal Bootloader. So to do that, we're going to type nano/etc/default/grub. And within there, we're looking for a specific line. That's this line here with the quotes around the word quiet. After that, we're going to add a space, then Intel _IOMMU equals on. Now, if you have an AMD processor, you're going to put AMD _IOMMU equals on. I have Intel, so I'm putting Intel IOMMU equals on. So we'll go ahead and save that file. And now we'll move on to the next step. The next step is to load the VFIO modules. Now, Proxmox 6.4 and above automatically loads the VFIO modules for you. But I like to still put this in just to make sure it eliminates some headaches down the road if things start to crop up and don't work. So we'll go ahead and edit this file and add in a few lines. So the file we're editing is the modules file. We'll go ahead and go into Nano and edit that file. Yours is likely going to be empty like mine is here. We'll paste the fields in. There's 4 lines that we want to add. That's all there is to it. We'll just hit Control-X to save it and go ahead and move to the next step. The next step, we need to blacklist some of the drivers that are automatically loaded by default. So to do that, we're also going to edit another file. The file we're editing is the blacklist config file, and it's listed here. Again, all these commands are going to be down in the description below. So if you get questions or confused on any of it, you can follow along there, or you can ask questions in the comments section. So we'll go ahead and edit this file. It should be empty, likely empty in yours as well. We'll paste in a few different fields that we want to blacklist. And these are the different drivers we want to make sure get blacklisted whenever the Proxmox node boots up. So we'll go ahead and, again, just like the other ones, we'll go ahead and save that file. And then the last couple of lines we want to add are optional. Sometimes when you do transcoding, you get a little crackling in the sound. In order to make that go away, the best thing that you can do is add a couple of little lines here. These are totally optional. If you want to add them, great. If you don't, that's fine too. So those are the 2 optional lines. If you want to add those in, they can help with some of the crackling in the audio. So the last thing we want to do is we want to update grub. So we'll go ahead and type update-grub and run that. And that's going to take some of the inputs that we've done, go ahead and reload them. And now we're ready to go with the updated bootloader. The next step is to get the details around our hardware because we want to be able to specifically pass the hardware that we have into our virtual machine. So to do that, we're going to type lspci. After we run the lspci, we see all of our PCI devices that we care about. Now, the one I'm interested in is the NVIDIA controller here. So we've got the NVIDIA, in my case, it's the GeForce GTX 1660 Ti, which is a mouthful. So that's the one we're going to actually pass into our virtual machines. But we need to know the hardware address for these. So we're going to get the hex values for the hardware address. In order to do that, we issue a simple command. It's just like what we did before with the lspci -n-s. And then we're going to put in the actual ID of this device, which if you look here is 01:00. So type 01:00. And what this is going to return is the hex values for all of the different hardware devices. So if you notice up here, I've got 4 different devices. I've got the actual GPU controller, I've got the hardware or the audio controller, the actual host controller, and USB. So right now it's going to show all 4 of those. And now we're going to tell Proxmox that's what we want to pass in or have available to pass into our virtual machines. So we'll do that with the following command. So here's the command that we want to issue. If you notice, I've got the cursor just to the right of the IDs. That's where we'll put in our hex values. You may have 2 hex values, you may have 4. It really depends on what your device is. So if you don't have all 4, that's okay. Whatever came up when you did this lspci command here, that's what we'll want. So we're going to copy those over in here, separate them with a comma, and I'll show you what the final command looks like. Okay, so here's the final command. If you notice, I have all 4 of the hex values comma separated here after it. Double check them to make sure that they match what your hardware is. All hardware is different. So if for some reason you did make a mistake, you can always go in and edit this file using Nano and make the changes there. But we're going to go ahead and hit enter here, and that'll go ahead and write that to the file so that the next time when we do the initialization on that, if I can speak, it'll go ahead and set everything up. So here's the command we need to do to reinitialize everything, or update it rather. And with this command, we'll go ahead and hit enter, let it go reinitialize everything, and we're all done. Now we'll reboot the Proxmox node, and the next step will go into the virtual machine, create that, and set up everything within Plex. So we'll go ahead and do that now. Okay, now we're going to set up our virtual machine for Plex. If you already have a virtual machine running Plex, then you can go ahead and skip to the next section. I'm going to do this in case somebody doesn't have a virtual machine yet and is starting from scratch. So we're going to go ahead and use Ubuntu 22.04, so the latest long-term support version of Ubuntu. We're going to go in here and say create VM. I'm going to leave it at VM 100. I'm just going to call it Plex. We'll hit next. I've downloaded the ISO, so if you see here it's 2404, so I've already downloaded it. We'll use that one. Hit next again. Not changing anything here in the system. We'll leave those defaults. I'm going to leave it at 32 gigs. If you look, I've got a video over here that'll walk you through how to attach larger storage, either USB or an internal drive, to your virtual machine. So that way, if you want to store things on a USB for your Plex server, or you don't have access to a NAS, then you can do that. So we'll go ahead and just leave this at 32 for right now. I'm going to say discard because it is an SSD. We'll hit next. CPUs, I'm just going to go ahead and give it 2 because we're going to be using hardware transcoding, so we don't need a lot of CPU power here. And then we'll go to memory. I'm going to give it 4 gigs, so 4096. And network, I'll leave alone and let it assign an IP address. Now you do want to have a static IP address, so however you set those up, you'll want to go ahead and make sure you set it up that way. I usually set that up on the router side. So hit next here and finish, and it'll go ahead and create the virtual machine for us. Okay, let's go ahead and start the virtual machine. We'll walk through the install real quick of how to install Ubuntu on a new machine. So we'll go ahead and hit try or install. Okay, so now we'll walk through each of the steps. I'm going to select English. We'll go ahead and say English for the keyboard. We're doing Ubuntu server. We're not doing the minimized version. It went ahead and assigned the IP address. So that's the IP address that I'll have. Hit done. I don't have a proxy address. We'll let it go out and check for the different mirror locations and make sure it can connect to those. Once you get to reading package lists, you can hit done. We're going to let it use the entire hard drive because that's the full 32 gigs that we gave it. This just tells you how it's laid out. I'm not going to change anything there, but if you need to, you can make any changes there you might want. It's just warning you that it's going to wipe the whole hard drive, which is exactly what you want. Say continue. And here we'll go ahead and put the name for the server and a login. So we'll do that and I'll meet you at the next step. Okay, we've entered all the user information. We're not going to do anything with Ubuntu Pro, so we'll continue. We do want an open SSH server so we can SSH into this for some other steps. So we'll hit done. Not going to make any other changes here. Done, and we'll let this finish. So this will take a little while. Once this is done, I'll reboot it and meet you at the next step. Okay, during the reboot, you may see an error like this. All you have to do for this is just click on hardware, go to the CD drive, and say, do not use any media. That's the same as taking out the USB stick or uninstalling a CD-ROM. So we'll say, okay. We'll go back to the console and then go ahead and hit enter, and then it'll finish the reboot. Okay, we've rebooted, so now we want to use SSH to connect in. Sometimes it's not easy to paste into the terminal here, so I'm going to open PowerShell. So we're going to SSH, maybe I just type SSH, and then we'll do the username and the IP address that we're connecting to. Go ahead and hit enter. It's going to ask us if we want to connect to this. We'll say yes, so it'll add it to our fingerprints. We'll go ahead and put in the password, and now we're in. So now we're going to issue some of those commands. The first things we're going to do is add the repository for Plex and go ahead and download the Plex key. So we'll do those with 2 commands. Again, all of these commands are going to be down in the description below. Okay, so we ran both the commands. The first one was to add the repository to our list of repositories. The second one was to actually get the key for Plex. Now, the one thing you want to make sure with this command is there's a dash here at the end. Sometimes folks miss the dash and then it errors out. So make sure you get that when you copy the commands from below. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do an apt update. So it'll refresh with what we just connected. Actually, we need to do sudo apt update because you can't run it as a regular user. So we've got the updates. Now we're going to do sudo apt install Plex Media Server. And this will go out, grab Plex Media Server, set it up and install it for us. And then we can go into the application and do all of our settings at that point. Now that it's all installed, we're going to actually go out and set up Plex. So to do that, we're going to go to the IP address of the machine that you're on, :32400/web. And that'll take you to the web interface of Plex where you'll log in and do everything to set things up. So we'll go ahead and log in and meet you in on the inside. Okay, here we are in Plex. I went ahead and added a video to the library. It's just a 4K file of a video that I recently did. So this way we'll be able to kind of test out our transcoding and see how it is working, or maybe it isn't working. So we're going to start it out. We're going to hit play right now. And there you go. It starts. Man, that's a great looking video. So we're going to go ahead and minimize this down. Go over here to the activity in the dashboard. And if you look, it's running at 4K right now. It's direct play, so it's not doing any transcoding. And if you look at the processor, it's really not doing a lot. It bumped a little bit when things started up, but it's kind of settling down at about 6%. So it's really not doing a whole lot because it's not doing any transcoding. So what we're going to do though is we're going to show how it works when you start transcoding. So let's go ahead and stop the video. And we're going to go over here to quality. And this is where you can set the quality if you haven't done it before. So internet streaming, you can set it to whatever you want if you want it to not use a lot of bandwidth, or if you don't have a lot of bandwidth. For home streaming though, what we're going to do is I'm going to just drop this down and just say 10 megabits. So it's going to convert it from a 4K file to a 1080p file. So it's going to have to do some transcoding. And since we don't have any hardware transcoding set up yet on this server, it's going to use just the CPU to do that. So we'll go ahead and hit save changes, and let's go back to the video and see what happens when we run that. Okay, so now we're back at the video. We'll go ahead and hit play. And if you notice, it's taking a little bit to start. It's kind of buffering here a little bit. Let's take a look at what's happening to the machine while we're doing it. So it's still running down here in the bottom. I'm going to go up here and hit the dashboard. And if you look, now that we're transcoding, it's fully saturated our CPU. We're at 100%. And if you look here, it's trying to transcode from 4K down to 1080p. So we're not using any hardware encoding, and it's just beating the snot out of the processor. So that's not something we want to have done. We want to fix that so that we can actually have this transcode without killing our CPU. So let's go ahead and take a look at how to do that. The next step is to install those drivers and to set up the pass-through of the hardware. So we'll go ahead and do that right now. Okay, back at Proxmox, what we need to do is we need to actually attach the hardware, the PCI hardware, to the virtual machine. So we're going to go ahead and shut down the virtual machine. We'll hit yes. And we'll let that finish shutting down. And now that it's shut down, we'll go to the hardware tab. And if we go up here to add, we'll select PCI device because we're doing a PCI pass-through. we'll go down to raw device, and in the drop-down menu, you're going to see all the PCI devices that are available. In our case, we're looking at the GeForce GTX 1660 Ti. Again, that mouthful of a GPU. So we'll go ahead and click on that, and we're going to say all functions. That way it's going to bring in all the PCI items associated with that into it. And then we're going to say add, and that's all we need to do there. Now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and restart this server. And if you have any issues right now where it gets stuck and it tells you it can't boot up, then go back and follow the steps for what we mapped in. Make sure those hardware IDs are correct for your device. So now we know that we're ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and log in, and then we're going to disable some default drivers, add the actual drivers we need for this card, and then check out how it does with transcoding. So we'll do that right now. Okay, now that we've SSH back into our server, some of the first commands we're going to issue are going to be to blacklist some devices. So we'll go ahead and put in the first command now. Go ahead and run that. It's going to ask for the password since you're doing sudo. And now we'll do the next command. Go ahead and run that. Now we want to do an update. We'll go ahead and paste that in and hit enter. It'll go ahead and do the update and make sure that everything's takes the settings of what we just input, and then we'll just do a reboot one more time. So let's say reboot. Actually, won't work unless you say sudo reboot. There we go. All right, so as soon as it's rebooted, we'll go ahead and log back in one more time. Okay, now that's rebooted, we've logged back in. We're going to do an apt update, just for good measures. We're going to do sudo apt update. Then we're going to add a few packages that we need to be able to get everything running. So we'll go ahead and run these, say yes, and this is going to take a little while. So as soon as this one's done, we'll then be able to install our drivers for our NVIDIA driver or our NVIDIA GPU. Okay, now that that's done, we're ready to install our NVIDIA drivers. Now there's two ways to do this. One way is to go to NVIDIA and download the latest drivers, and that's a great way to do it. But anytime you have a kernel update or a major update within Ubuntu, you run the risk of it unloading those drivers, and then you have to manually go back in and reinstall them. So instead, what I like to do is use the package manager install. That's a simple command. All it is right here is sudo ubuntu-drivers auto install. And what that's going to do is it's going to look at the hardware that you have on your machine, which in my case was the NVIDIA card we looked at before, and it's going to download the appropriate drivers and install those for you. And then whenever you do package manager updates, it'll go ahead and make sure you get the latest updates. So we'll go ahead and run that. This will take a little bit for it to run. And once it's done, we'll be able to test and make sure that everything's up and running. So we'll meet you right at the end when this is done installing. Okay, it's all installed and we get to reboot one more time. Okay, so we'll just do the sudo reboot. And then we'll SSH back in and take a look at things for the last time. I promise this is the last time we're going to reboot. Okay, so we've rebooted that final time, I promise. And now we can go ahead and check and make sure that our driver's loaded for our NVIDIA card. So we type NVIDIA-SMI. And what this is showing us is this is kind of a real-time view of anything that's being transcoded. Right now it says no running processes found, which makes sense because we don't have any videos being transcoded. So what we're going to do is I'll split this between this and Plex, and we'll take a look at the transcoding as it goes on. Okay, so we're back in Plex now. So we've got the video that's amazing that you'll want to watch over and over again. We're going to go to settings. We're going to go down to transcoder, and down here at the bottom, it'll say hardware transcoding device. We want to check use hardware accelerated video encoding. And then in the dropdown, you should see whatever you've passed through. In my case, it's the mouthful GeForce GTX 1660 Ti that we've been working with. So we'll go ahead and select that, hit Save Changes. And now when we go back to our video here and we hit play, we'll be able to see it start up. And again, since we have it set to transcode down to 1080p, we should see it start. You'll see that it's a little bit smaller here in the frame than it was before. And if we go over here to our SSH window and we type NVIDIA SMI, you see now that it's got a process in there where it's actually transcoding. So when we look back then over here at our activity in the dashboard, we can see that the 4K video is being transcoded down to 1080p. And down here at the bottom, you'll see there is a little spike when it started up, but it's leveled off and is down at about 13%. So it's doing great because it's 2 CPUs, barely even using them. It's dropping even lower, about 6%. So it'll settle out about 5 to 6%. So I typically just run with 2 CPUs. It runs just fine. You do get a little spike when things start, but everything settles out. And you can see now it's down at 3%, still transcoding that 1080p or that 4K video to 1080p, and it's barely even touching the processor. So it's a great setup for our hardware transcoding, and it's working perfectly. If we were to unload that, you would see our processor would shoot back up to 100% immediately. And that's all there is to it. Now you should have PCI Passthrough from Proxmox into a virtual machine running Plex. If you ran into any issues, go ahead and drop them down there in the comments section and I'll help you wherever I can. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. Thanks to everybody who's already subscribed so far. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video.